All right, I think this is what video 3 in the series Man Know Thyself. So, picking up where we left off, we're going to talk about emotions, and basically how they leave imprints on the subconscious, because the subconscious mind is what rules us 96% of the time. So, it's important to know how it works and how we can basically get it to run the programs that we want it to run, as opposed to the programs that we may be currently running and that we don't like. All right, so no sciences. I've only heard this information and seen it demonstrated. All right, so I'm going to, um, I guess, just give it a go and see where we end up. So this is an example of a cell membrane. Okay, so this is like the inside of the cell underneath. This is the outside, and this is like the wall, I guess, that protects the inside of the cell. This is the membrane. All right. Most people think that the nucleus of the cell is the brain, but that has been proven to be false. You can take the nucleus out of the cell and it'll still go on about its life. But remove the membrane and the cell has no way to interact or communicate with the outside world. It can't receive information, and it can't, I don't believe it can also send information. So it's basically, at that time, it becomes brain dead, no signals. Okay, so it has been proven that pretty much the membrane is the brain of the cell, not the nucleus. The nucleus is more like the, I guess he refers to him as like the gonad of the cell. All right, so basically, what happens when you have an emotion, a chemical is released. All right, so every emotion that we have is like a drug. It's literally like a drug. Um, Food, drugs, and sex. Well, good food, drugs, and sex all hit the same, like they release the same chemical in the brain. It all hits the same place. That's why when somebody can fast from eating, they can usually abstain from other fleshly things. It gives them a strength to be able to say no, or a strength to be able to fight that emotion, that chemical. Now, what happens is, say someone who has a tendency of getting angry a lot. They see things, they interpret those things that they see, and it makes them angry because that's all that happens. There's some type of outside stimulus. You allow it to stimulate you, and through that stimulation, based on past experience, you have an interpretation of that stimulus. So, for one person who may have a more violent past, someone stepping on their shoes could throw their whole day off whack. They might want to fight. For another person, who might not be as violent, or maybe a little more passive. Someone steps on their shoes. Oh, don't worry about it. It's cool. And it's the exact same stimulus, but they have a different interpretation. All right. Through those interpretations, we then basically that's kind of where the conscious mind tells the subconscious mind what they think about an experience. So if you think about an experience, say for example, you come across a lot of racism. Okay, some people that may come across a lot of racism can act in a positive way, a neutral way, or even a more aggressive way. So some people, every time they get called a racial slur, they might want to go punch somebody in their face. So every time they hear a racial slur, guess what their subconscious mind is going to do? It's going to feed them that. It's going to give them that desire to go and punch that person in the face, because consciously, the first couple of times when you experienced it, when you had a decision, because there was no pre-programmed decision made, when you had a decision, you decided to act the way you act. And that let your subconscious mind know how we will act from then on when that situation arises. While another person who may have gone through a lot of racial slurs or whatever, they may look at it as the other person being the ignorant one. So they laugh at them while the other person gets upset. Same stimulus, but an interpretation causes a different response inside. Okay, so one person subconsciously, their program is to laugh at racism, while another person is to attack it. All right, and it can be changed either way, because the person who was at one point laughing at racism can receive an experience that makes them now hate that race, and then they no longer laugh at it, but then they want to react, while the other person can get new understanding, or think differently after and repent, and then no longer wants to fight anymore because he has a new revelation which has changed his subconscious program. All right, so but my point is, when you it's kind of like that example. I think of when the first time when I was in school, and I the first instance I ever saw of like cocaine on it, this was in school, and they were giving it to a mouse, and the mouse kept coming back and hitting the button to get more cocaine until it overdosed. And it this reminds me of that, because the mouse would run up to the feeding thing, hit the button, the buzzer would sound, and then the coke would fall, and it would sniff it or eat it or whatever, and get high, and then go away. Then it would come back a little shorter, do it again, then it shorter and shorter and shorter until it was literally just sitting at the thing, hitting the button over and over again. That's how our cells are when it comes to emotion. Emotion is a chemical, it's a drug. Our cells are the ones that receive that chemical. When you feel that, when you have that rush of emotion and you can literally feel it coursing through your veins, whether it be passion, you could be turned on, you can feel it coursing through your body, or it could be anger, you can feel it coursing through your body. A lot of people say they see red or they black out. You can feel that anger in you. Sometimes it makes you tremble and all that kind of stuff. Fear, same thing. You can feel fear when it courses through your body. If you've ever been scared like all at once, and you can feel that adrenaline just instantly rush through your body, it's because mentally you are in a fight or flight stage. You feel like you're in imminent danger, so you either need to run or fight. That's why that adrenaline hits your body that fast. So you can feel that emotion go through your body, where your cells are the ones that receive that. That's what this membrane is. It has receptors on it that receive from outside stimulus, so it knows what to do on the inside. Just like our brain receives light, it receives sound, it receives touch, taste, all those things, and then it interprets it as chicken. Chicken, right? I would say chicken. Or it interprets it as ice cream, or it interprets it as hot to the touch, or loud to the ears, or soothing, or the kind of music you like, or the music you don't. It interprets that for you, and then there's a inner situation, basically. So it's the exact same thing. You get mad, chemical rushes through your body, your cells receive it. If you constantly get mad, guess what? It's just like when somebody's getting high. They build up a tolerance to it. So now it's not like it takes more to get you mad. You still get mad at the same things. The difference is now your cells crave it more. So that's when the body becomes the mind. For example, I know many men can attest to this, that there can be a point when you really want this girl, and until you have sex with her, and then you kind of become sober. It's like up until that point, it all made sense. Like, you really want this, you do anything to have it, and you're chasing, and then you get it, and you be like, maybe I was just horny. That's what most people would say, but that's the body becoming the mind. See, what happens is when the emotions hit the cell, the cells begin to speak back to you. So, for example, you have thoughts. The thoughts make you upset. The upset causes or it makes you angry. The anger, the emotion for anger is released. The chemical is released into your body. Your body starts to feel the anger, and then the body starts to think for you. You know what? I should go over there and knock that. I should go over there and do this and do that. Or, for example, if it's with something more passionate, man, I really want to get this itch off, I should go over there and do this, or if it's something more positive, man, because I love this person, even though I don't want to do this, I'm compelled by this emotion of love, this emotion of compassion, or whatever it is, in each situation. And usually when a person's upset, this is called the transference of energy, once they get it off their chest, they're no longer upset. But guess what? Now the other person is, because they've transferred that energy. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's the exact same thing. Somebody can really think that they want to have sex. Many Christian men have gone through this, women too, but I know in particular in my story, Christian men, go through the scenario of you think that you want to have sex, and when you have it, you feel guilty afterwards, and then you can clearly see that you weren't thinking soberly, but your body was thinking for you. And most people don't know how to stop that. But that's what I'm telling you here. The thoughts lead to emotions. The emotions lead to a physical feeling, which then starts to generate thoughts. It's kind of hard for me to think of actual scenarios, because unless you're being aware of it, it's hard to remember and record it while it's happening. But the awareness of it is how it no longer hides from you. That's when that sin that's within has been revealed to you. Now you can see it. That's usually when the guilt and the conviction come in at, because you want more now. You want differently. It's kind of like Paul says, I'm doing what I don't want to do. That means that what I want to do is the good thing, but I'm not able to do the good thing. It's the exact same thing. We're following through the same process. All right, now, for example, most people, when they try to stop a behavior pattern that's already been established over a long time, remember, they've already programmed the subconscious mind, because imagination times vividness equals reality. That's what reality is, what the subconscious mind holds as real. So you have an emotion, or you have thoughts. The thoughts leads, your interpretation leads to an emotion. The emotion then registers here. Well, we got past that part, so let's go past that. So you want to stop doing it now. For example, someone who wants to lose weight. Maybe they've been eating the wrong kind of food, but like I said, sex, drugs, and food, they release a chemical in the brain that's addictive. Well, every chemical is addictive. That's pretty much what happens. Your cells become addicted to that chemical of emotion. When a person is in a certain behavior pattern, like most of us have seen people change, go from being happy people to angry people, or from angry people to happy people to depressed people, all that kind of stuff. Good people turn bad people turn good, all that kind of stuff. We see people change. Now, it starts off just like habits start off. It's slow, it's steady, it's slow and kind of random. It almost seems like someone gets upset over and over and over again, then they become an upset person, because their cells have received that emotion so much that they've gotten dull to it. And it's just like drugs, first person is just smoking weed because they want to see what it's like. Then they like the feeling of getting high. Now they got to go to a higher grade because the old stuff don't work the same anymore. It's the exact same thing. Now, when you try to stop one of those things, your cells have become drug addicts. They become addicts of the emotion that you at one point in time were giving them. Now they will start to cry out for that chemical. They will start to give you thoughts that will promote that chemical. For example, someone who wants to stop eating sweets so that they can lose weight, once they stop eating those sweets, they may go 2 or 3 days really, really good, right? And then those thoughts start to come into their head. You start to get quote unquote cravings. We think the cravings are us, but it's not us. That's the secret. That's where this body maintains control, where it makes us think that it's us, but it's not. It's us, because it's us in the past. It's what we told the body that we wanted in the past, but it is not presently us. All right, the present us wants better. The conscious us wants better, but the subconscious mind is always going to give us what it thinks we want, what we told it that we want. So if you told it that you like Chips Ahoy cookies, guess what? When it's time to diet and do all the things that are required to lose weight, it's going to say, but we like Chips Ahoy cookies. Nothing's wrong with Chips Ahoy cookies. You can eat a couple. That's not going to stop you. As a matter of fact, you know what? Just pig out today and start tomorrow. That's what the subconscious mind tells us. That's when our body has become our mind, when it starts to think for us. And then we do the things that we didn't want to do, like Paul says. And then afterwards we have this conviction, this guilt, because then we become present again. Our body has been satisfied. It's just like that drug addict that it can talk $20 out of you, you know what I mean, to whatever good reason or story that the addict might give you. You give them that $20 and then they disappear. Once they've gotten what they wanted, there's no need to be around. Just like when the person who has sex, they didn't want to have sex, afterwards they might feel guilty, and their subconscious mind is gone now. The body is satisfied, it's disappeared. It's gone into the sub level, when before it was above level, it was above the conscious mind. So that happens with diet, with somebody who's trying to control their anger. When the outside circumstance, the normal stimulus that would normally make them mad, the body is like, you gonna let that go? You gonna let that slide? Like, you gonna let them talk to you like that? Where you from, they don't talk to you like that. You don't let them talk to you like that. And the next thing you know, you gassed yourself up, and now you want to say something. Now you can't let it go because the body has become your mind. And then you fight the person. For example, let's say you fight the person, get it off, and then a couple minutes later you're thinking, man, that was a bad decision, because now you're conscious. You know, your subconscious mind, for lack of better words, has got its nut off. So now it's sober again. And that's what happens to us over and over and over again. It's not just with sex, you know, but everything is the exact same. Once the subconscious mind gets its nut off, then we become conscious again, and that's usually where our guilt sets in, because we weren't the person we wanted to be. We were our subconscious programs that we have pre-programmed in the subconscious mind already. But we can change that. For example, and you can create an outside stimulus yourself with your imagination. You can imagine somebody doing the things to you that would normally make you mad. You can imagine somebody saying the things to you that would normally hurt your feelings, or being in a scenario that would normally cause you to stumble and do something you don't want to do. You can imagine yourself being in a situation where if you don't want to drink, you're surrounded by alcohol and people trying to force you to drink, and you can have responses. You can then, kind of like do that replay and do-over where you can see the exact same scenario situation over and over and over again and try to have a different response each time until it becomes normal. That's what happens. That's the exact same way we develop patterns. When you put a child who is not hostile in a hostile environment, he becomes an animal. He adapts. But he wasn't an animal before, but through learned behavior, he becomes an animal. Just like an animal, through learned behavior, can become domestic. A wild animal can become domesticated. It's the exact same thing, but it's through a continual pattern. So it's like you have to make it a practice to imagine. And when I know for most of us, imagination is useless because we're taught as children, imagination has no place in the world of adults, because you can't make money from it and you can't sustain a family with it, right? But imagination is what created us in the first place. You use it whether you want to or not. If you remember, let's say you remember an argument, you remember a wrong that was done to you, or you remember a right that was done to you, and it creates an emotion, you just used your imagination to bring the past into the present. You can do the exact same thing with the future. You can imagine a situation in the future and bring the future into the present with that emotion. It's the exact same thing. All right, so just to wrap this up, emotions are chemicals that we create. Happiness is just an interpretation of an outside stimulus. We know this because for one person, one thing might make them happy that makes another person mad. That's just how it is. So we can't necessarily say happiness is this, because happiness is interpretation. For example, at one point in time, happiness might have been money, but then you might have kids and happiness is seeing them happy. At one point in time, happiness was all about you. Now happiness may be all about them. So happiness changes. It's through interpretation and outside stimulus, but it's up to us to interpret it. Now we create our interpretations through our perceptions, because for example, for one person, homosexuality might be wrong. So when they look at two men or women that may genuinely love each other, they can't see love. While another person who may not be homosexual but just looks at love on a more universal level can clearly see love. It's the exact same thing. Outside stimulus is the exact same outside stimulus with two different interpretations. So they cause two different reactions. But we are in control of those things. In our imagination, we can have any reaction we want to, negative, positive, neutral. We can practice that over and over and over again until it becomes the fact. Some people have done this in bad compromises where it's just easier to get along with the get along. So what used to bother them no longer bothers them. They've created that. They've removed that themselves. It happens over and over again. Over and over again. We see a lot of people who get out of prison and might not be able to adjust in this world, or people who retire from work having that same pattern, same thoughts, and now that they don't have that anymore, they don't know what to do. And a lot of times retirees pass away that way because they don't have anything else to do. There is no more life for them. We, having these secrets, we don't have to be like that. We can take control and do what it is that we want to do, and it doesn't happen automatically. And that's the other thing that gets people, is most of the people who teach this stuff have gone through it for decades. they've mastered it over a long period of time, and we expect things to change just because we get a revelation. A revelation is only a revealing of a thing, but it's not a transformation. Transformation comes after you endure in the sight or in the imagination, the image, the imagination times vividness that equals reality. If you endure in that vividness, then you attain the reality. Whatsoever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received, and it shall be yours. But you have to endure in that belief. You have to act as if you received it. How would you be if you had that thing? What would be the emotions? What would you say? I mean, because you can think about that in the worst case scenario. What would happen if so-and-so did this to me? What would happen if I go here and I don't get the job? What happens if I express my feelings and they don't feel the same way? What happens if I go outside or I get on this airplane and it crashes? People can imagine the best part. I mean, the worst things is so natural for us. It's harder for us not to do it with the easy things. So, I mean, you've already been doing it. And if it's easier to imagine the negative, then at least use that to develop your imagination. Because if it's easier to do it that way, then just do it that way. Realize that that's what you're doing and then flip it. All right, the exact same way I did with this line here where it says, but if you will not know yourselves, you dwell in poverty, and it is you who are that poverty. That's like the negative, right? But you can replace that. You can just do the inverse of this. But if you will know yourselves, then you dwell in wealth, and it is you who are that wealth. So it's the exact same thing. If it takes remembering how you imagine things negatively in order for you to be able to remember things or imagine things positively, then do it, just so that you can get familiar with how you work. All right. So I'm going to end this one. That was a good wrap up, actually. So I don't exactly know what's going to be next, but I'm going to continue in the whole series, Man, Know Thyself. Hopefully this is meaningful to you guys. If not, or if you have any questions, suggestions, go ahead and leave them, and I can try to incorporate that into my next videos and stuff like that. Thank you guys for spending time with me, and I'll see you in the next video.